like when the guys, I know, we'll start in a minute. The guys he works with, sometimes they'll call. I for years now I've heard him. Like he always has the answers. Like you have to climb up on the roof and turn the thing 3 times to the right and say a magic word and do that. Like he always knows the answer. I would be so surprised if. Hey, Ro. Thank you, darling. You didn't. You should have timed it for the applause. Go back. You got to make an entrance. Have you already been on your cruise, or are you going? Oh, okay. Oh, it's 11:11. Let's all stand. Are we ready to go? Oh, Charles. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. Welcome to Metron, coming to you live from, where are we? Atlanta, Kirkwood neighborhood, which is Midtown adjacent, and happy Father's Day to everyone. Glad that you took time out of your Father's Day to be here today. Let's get started with saying the Lord's Prayer together, please, with the metaphysical stuff added. Our Father, who art in heaven, presence of divine love and light that lives within us and within all of life, hallowed be thy name. We invoke the powerful creative nature of all that is sacred and holy. Thy kingdom come. We embrace the healing essence that is the kingdom of heaven within us. Thy will be done. We accept our greatest good as we align with our divine nature. On earth as it is in heaven, knowing that the affairs of our lives reflect our evolving consciousness. Give us this day our daily bread. Each day we receive great blessings from within and throughout all the activities of our lives. And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. We accept the divine nature of all things and all people, including ourselves, as we move away from judgment and toward greater awareness of divine presence. And lead us not into temptation. We shall be vigilant in expressing and experiencing the oneness with all life. But deliver us from evil, as we are learning to live without fault-finding and suffering. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. For we accept the consciousness of divine perfection with all its power and glory right here, right now, and forever. Amen, and so it is. Before you're seated, go say hey to somebody you haven't said. Don't just go hug them without permission. I used to say hug your neighbor. Now I'm saying check to make sure they're cool with that. And but then and then you may be seated. I like that hat. And then you may be seated. Just a couple of announcements. As you know, we have Jonah with us today, but three of my kids, because my daughter is here as well. My other daughter, I don't call her daughter-in-law. She's a sweetheart. But Jared's with us today, and Jonah and Sophie are with us, and Jonah's able to be back again next Sunday. So really excited about that. Last week, Jared was on his way to Spain, and they were on their way to France. Sophie's 90-year-old grandmother lives alone, autonomous. They said that just went to the doctor, and he said, don't come back for 5 years. And so that was cool. But anyway, I was able to take them all to the airport at the same time, and that was neat. Y'all come on in, whoever y'all are. And I kind of have I have Chandra tentatively scheduled for first Sunday of July, and so remember that and stay consistent in your giving. I appreciate that. And also, we have Meditation Weekend number 19, the 19th one, coming up on August the 5th and 6th on Tybee Island, which, if you're not familiar, is right outside of Savannah, and it's really cool. If you've never, Tybee's great, but it's worth going just for Savannah. Savannah's a really, if you haven't been there, it's an amazing place. And so keep all those. If you want to go to the Meditation Weekend, just go to the cover photo on my Facebook page, and you can join the group there. Some people like to join the group even if they're not going, just because they want to keep up with what's happening with everybody. So you are certainly welcome to do that. All right. I was noticing in my memories today, Father's Day 6 years ago, you were with us. And as I've told you many times, Jonah sort of helped me brainstorm for what Metron is. And I sort of bounced some ideas off of him, and he kind of helped me think it through. And so I've always considered him to, be foundational to this. And always glad to have Jared here. I'm still getting rave reviews from the interview we did with him back in April, and at some point we'll probably do even a follow-up on that. Judah, of course, is at his church. He just tagged me in something, so he's and I haven't heard from Christina yet. She's 2 hours earlier, so I will hear from her later in the day. But anytime I can have any of my kids, I'm always happy to have them with me. And today, Jonah, he may explain to you what he's doing. He's very innovative, very next level. And so I came in today and I said, okay, this is interesting. And so it's sort of a direction he's going in now, and I'm sure we're all going to love it. So I want him to take his time and share with you whatever he wants to share. Without any further ado, would you please welcome the one, the only, Jonas Willie.
Right. So yeah, this is hi everybody. It's great to be with you. This is kind of how I produce at home. I usually use guitars and bass and stuff like that, but I'm gonna do something that I've never done live before. But basically, I'm gonna manipulate some. See how it goes.
Just do it.
so much.
Jonah, what do you? If I were going to explain to somebody what you're doing, what's the name for that? What do you call that?
So this is dub. I mean, it's a Jamaican style of music, but or style of making music. But basically, I'm taking these loops that I've created preemptively and recorded, and then breaking them down into this soundboard here, and then I'm giving you each piece, and then using my delay to kind of freak it. So like with this one, for instance, like I got drums right here. Actually, that's not the one I want. Pull this one up. It takes doing Metron to try something new for me, so I love that I'm able to do this with y'all. So I appreciate y'all.
One thing I
hanging
love,
out.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's actually a meditative quality to it. It kind of reminded me of the same effect when Chelsea was here and doing the. It's like meditation's not all. It's not monolithic. It's not always quiet.
That's
and
how I
everything.
look at it.
It's very. It's just. I'm very interested in what this is. It's very next level.
Yeah, it's definitely that's the wave I'm on. But yeah, so like I got some drums right here. Bass. Guitars. Strings. And then the other night, something just told me to tell you guys. It was 2 words. It said, "Love yourself." And I don't know. I just was like, that's my message today. Is just to remember to love yourself, because I feel like you can't love anybody else if you don't love yourself first. And yeah, that's my energy today. Is if it's something you can meditate to and just remember, something simple like that. So yeah, here's another one.
Just do it. Yourself. Just do it. 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 Just do it.
Jonas Willie. Very cool. You're fine, it's fine. I love that. Y'all did too. Y'all were grooving. That was really, really cool. Sorry. Just making sure my jeans are on my shoes. Thank you. Very, very cool. I have the coolest kids in the world. I have my firstborn and my lastborn here today. I was thinking about this. Jared's heard me tell this before, but years ago, the Black Lips were playing at the Earl, and Rolling Stone magazine was there to do a story on y'all. So I'd gone outside, I guess, to use the phone or something, and the guy that was writing the story, he's came out for a cigarette break, and so we're standing by each other, and he goes, he takes a puff, and he says, "So are you like Jared's dad?" This is exactly the way he talked. And I said, "Yeah." He said, "So you're like a minister?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you like speak in tongues?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And I didn't know what was coming next, and he goes, "Man, that is so cool." I thought, when Rolling Stone magazine tells you that you're cool, then I thought, I've definitely arrived. Yeah, I love that. All right, Charles, if there's a Charles out there and you can hear us, are we ready for the podcast? Just do it. Welcome to Metron Live, the Metron podcast, coming to you from Metron Community. Metron people, would you give the podcast people a big welcome? Hello. We speak into the atmosphere and we say, "Let there be light." We are into the third part of our series for June. Thank you for the great feedback that I've gotten from it. We're calling it Mount Zion Realities, Living a Free Life of Righteousness, Peace, and Joy in a Legalistic World. Earlier in the week, some of y'all know Carl Kobos. He sent me a text, and he said, "Have you ever thought that," because the scripture is about the comparison of Mount Sinai with Mount Zion. And he said, have you ever thought that Sinai sounds like cyanide? That is all. I said, yeah, that's good. That'll preach. So, Carl, if you're watching, shout out to you for that. Anyway, I'm going to go. I'm not going to show you the whole, because it's a lengthy 2 or 3 verses there in Hebrews 12. I think I've shown it to you in the NIV and something else last week. I don't remember. I want to show it to you today in the Mirror translation. Hebrews 12. We're going to look at verse 18, verse 22, and verse 23, okay? So this is the way he says it. We are not talking of a visible and tangible mountain here, one spectacularly ablaze in a setting of dark blackness and tempestuous winds. I'm assuming you know what we're talking about, but if you're just getting into this series, he's referring to Mount Sinai, which is famous for where Moses received the 10 Commandments. And when you read the rest of Exodus chapter 20, once the commandments are received, then God starts speaking in an audible voice that sounds very much like thunder, and the people who heard it actually asked Moses to tell God to knock it off. They're like, we can't take it. It's too much. It's too harsh. It's too overwhelming. You can talk to us, but please tell God to just talk to you, and you talk to us, because we can't deal with the direct reception of it. And he goes on to say that if even an animal touched Mount Sinai, it was so holy that they would be killed, they'd be burned. And so it's this idea that God's presence is too awesome, it's too much, okay? So he says the dramatic encounter of Moses on the mountain is by far exceeded by the mountaintop experience to which we are now welcomed and elevated through Christ. Mankind is now fully represented and co-seated together with Christ in heavenly places. By contrast, we have been welcomed to an invisible Mount Zion. So there actually was a geographical location called Mount Zion, but the writer of Hebrews here is talking about a mindset. Sinai is a mindset. Mount Zion is a mindset, okay? We have been welcomed to an invisible Mount Zion, the city of peace, Jerusalem. That's what the word Jerusalem means. The residence of the living God, the festive assembly of an innumerable angelic host. We are participating in a mass joint celebration of heavenly and earthly beings, the ecclesia or ecclesia church of the firstborn, mirror inscribed in the heavenlies. Now, before I go on with this, the word that we get translated into English as church in the Greek is the word ecclesia. That's why there's a book of Ecclesiastes. That's the same root word. So if you ever hear somebody use the term, it's an ecclesiastical garb or ecclesiastical approach, they're saying it's what's coming through church world, okay? That's the simplest definition of the ecclesia. It technically means the called out ones, but in the context of the scriptures, it means the church, okay? Our original identity, ecclesia, and this is in the Greek, from ek, a preposition that always denotes origin. Remember last week I reminded you what Doug Wentz said, the road to Damascus is actually the road to demask us. The reason you get so frustrated with trying to change all the time is God's purpose is to bring you back to who you originally were. Can I really rock your world? Some people say, I'm just trying to be like Jesus. You know what Jesus wants? He wants for you to be like you. Not everybody's ready to receive that. We're not trying to be conformed into some image of some. We can follow him and read after him, but his purpose is, let me show you who you always have been from the foundation of the world. Who told you you were naked? Who told you you were fallen? Who told you you were separated? Well, I ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What's your point? Who told you that was going to separate you? Okay? That's why Paul comes along and he says, you were alienated from God where? In your mind. So ek is a preposition that always denotes origin, and kaleo, meaning to identify by name to surname, is endorsed by Jesus, patterned in him, the firstborn from the dead. One thing you can say about Jesus is Jesus was completely original, completely true to the template of his life. He never wavered from it. If anybody ever challenged him on it, he wasn't trying to be grandiose and full of himself. He would just say, no, I'm the way. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. He's not trying to convince anybody. He's just like, no, that's who I am. You know, at 12, and it's a good day to remember this on Father's Day, but Jesus had a stepfather. His name was Joseph, and Joseph was a carpenter. And as was traditional in that part of the world, a man raised his sons in the family tradition. So Jesus learned carpentry because Mary was betrothed to a man who was a carpenter. In fact, the reason Jesus was born in Bethlehem is because that's where Joseph was from. Remember when there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed, and everybody had to go back to their place of origin? That's not where Mary was from. That's where the stepfather was from. And then there's this moment, because Jesus lived in a blended family. If you believe in the virgin birth, Mary and Joseph had other children, sons and daughters. And at 12, they're going to Jerusalem for a festival. Jesus disappears for 3 days. Finally, Mary and Joseph, who are frantic, they finally find him in the temple. He's talking to doctors and lawyers, and Mary takes it personally. She says, "Why have you done this to us?" You know what it's like, those of you that have children, you know, when they're lost and they're found, you're so relieved they're found, but you just want to smack the tar out of them. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm happy you're alive, but I'm going to I'm going to threaten you with death for a minute because you scared the hell out of me. And that's what Mary was saying. She's like, we have been looking for you for 3 days. And Jesus does not apologize. He doesn't say, oh, Mama, I'm sorry. He says, how did you not know I had to be about my Father's business? And you know what's interesting? You never hear from Joseph again. For any of you that have ever dealt with blended families and stepchildren, that's a moment of truth when that boy that you've raised looks at you and says, you're not my daddy. I mean, I learned carpentry, but I had to be about my Father's business. I'm not saying Joseph went away. I'm just saying that's the last you ever hear mentioned of him. It definitely altered Joseph's relationship with his stepson. And what Jesus did here, or what the writer says here, is the ecclesia is for you to find out who you've always been. Even something as simple as Jonah saying, I heard these 2 words the other night, love yourself. We've said that before, but you know what? There's no more profound prophetic word. And it's something you have to remind yourself of on a regular basis. And Jesus would say things about himself that would just seem intentionally provocative. You know, he's talking about there's one greater than Abraham here. And you don't say that to a bunch of people that virtually worship Abraham. And they challenge him on this. How do you know so much about Abraham? You're not even 35 years old, or not even 50 years old. And Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. You know, if you were one of Jesus' good friends, you would say, why do you say stuff like that? You're just going to infuriate them. But he could not lie. He's like, no, I'm the embodiment of the I am. And the fact that he says, pattern of the firstborn from the dead, it's to show you that so are you. That's why we have the concept of Jesus being an elder brother, is to show you Jesus discerned his origin. You have to discern your origin. All right? Now, today's Father's Day. Let me show you some of these scriptures I've shown you before, but some of these I haven't shown you in these translations. I love translations. I love that the diamond has lots of different facets, and you can, like one word, you just turn it a little bit and the light hits it another way, and it shows you something you hadn't seen before. How am I going to connect the dots with Father's Day with the ecclesia? Well, I'm glad you asked that. Let me show you this scripture. This is Proverbs 22:6. I grew up hearing this. Raise up a child in the way he should go, and when he's older, he will not depart from it. And when I heard it ministered, it always meant keep them in church, teach them the Bible, teach them right from wrong, and when they grow up, they'll be good Christians. That's not what this verse is talking about. I've shown this to you before, but let me show you again. It bears repeating. This is out of the Amplified Classic. What the Hebrew actually says is, train up a child in the way he. Now remember, the Bible's written by men to men, so in 2023 we would say he/she. Train up a child in the way he should go, and in keeping with his individual gift or bent, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. From what? Finding his origin. Those of you that have more than one child know that your children have some similarities, and then they have some things about their personality that are completely unique to them. You know why that is? Because that's the way it's supposed to be. And as a parent, your job is not to try to make them conform to who you are, but to help them discover who they are and build the self-esteem so that they can embrace who they are and not go through their life comparing themselves to some ideal. Because I'm telling you, I've been counseling with people for years. You can't believe how many people are vicariously living out things through their children, things that were unfulfilled. I can't tell you the men I've counseled with over the years that don't want to play sports, but their dad missed a scholarship, and so he's trying to. I'm not saying that's true for everybody, but so many guys I've talked to, and some girls who have said, I don't even want to do this, but it's like an unfulfilled dream of his, and he's trying to live it through me. I'm not saying you can't instruct kids. I mean, I not only went into the vocation of my father, but I mean, my father and grandfather and two of my grandfathers, one of my great grandfathers were in the ministry. You know what? The essence of what I do is still continued in my children, even though it's not conventional to the way I was raised. And I got to tell you this, I've had to work out a lot of things with my own father in my own life, but one thing I will give him that I'm eternally grateful for is he never tried to make me into his image. My dad was a great pulpitarian. If I had a nickel for every time in my life I've heard, your dad, the quality of your dad's voice. When your dad speaks, it's like hearing from God. Nobody's ever said that about my voice. It's like there's some things somebody walks up, you're like, wait, let me guess. My dad's voice sounds like God. How did you know? Because you're the 17th person that's told me that today. But I remember when I told him felt like I was called to the ministry, he responded so little that I remember at the time thinking, are you not happy about this? I mean, I thought we'd be excited. We're going to, and now I realize he actually did me a favor, because one thing that he always did that I think was smart, anytime I would ask him, when can I drive, when can I date, when can I do this, whatever, he would always say, when you show me you're mature enough to handle it, you can do it. So I'm constantly on this quest to prove to him how mature I am. So when I told my dad at 13 I felt like I was called to preach, he didn't hardly put the newspaper down. He was like, oh, that's nice. And I'm thinking, do you not care? But you know what it did? It made me say, I'll show you. And so I, at 13, go out, not in this neighborhood, but in neighborhoods not far from here. McClendon Avenue is, 2 blocks that way. That's where we lived. And I showed him, because I was doing it unto the Lord, but a lot of it I was doing unto my dad. And when I began to produce fruit, he applauded it. I'm not sure that that would have happened if they'd thrown a big party, because you know what I mean? It's like I might not have been as aggressive. So he actually did me a great favor. Let me show you this same verse of Scripture in the concordant literal version. I've never shared this with you before. This is the way it's interpreted here. Train up a youth corresponding to his proper way. Even when he is old, he shall not withdraw from it. What is he saying? He's not talking about, of course you should teach your kids right from wrong. Of course you should instill a sense of morality in them. That's a no-brainer. Of course. But that's not what these verses are talking about. They're saying if you celebrate your child's individuality, they won't spend the rest of their life trying to find who they are. Because it's already been confirmed by an authority figure. Oh, this is who you are. Okay, I celebrate that. So when they're older, they do not depart from what? Their proper way. Not the proper way. Their proper way. Now, this is the difference between Sinai and Mount Zion. On Sinai, the people ran from God. The people were like, we can't bear it. Everybody was put off by God. On Mount Zion, it says it's a party. Everybody wants to come. I mean, you look at not only the people Jesus hung out with socially, but the men he chose for his staff. You want to say, Jesus, you need to hire a good headhunter, because these guys are not, if you're trying to do a ministry thing, these guys don't know anything about the scriptures. I mean, they're a mess. You know, 2 or 3 of them are your cousins who are redneck fishermen. One of them is Simon the Zealot was an anarchist who followed Jesus because he believed Jesus was going to overthrow the Roman government. Matthew was a tax collector who was hated in the community because he collected taxes for Rome. Peter, till Jesus ascended, Peter didn't seem to have changed at all. You know, after you've worked with Jesus for that many years, you'd say, well, Peter, I just see Jesus all over you. No, you didn't see. What you saw was Peter. And so you could see just from the eclectic group that Jesus chose, he chose them not to try to change them. He chose them because of who they were. The worst thing that ever happened to the church mindset, especially as it's interpreted through Mount Sinai, is this is what a Christian is supposed to be like. If you're supposed to be like a Christian, you're supposed to be like this. And, you know, I tell you this all the time, there's over 45,000 Christian denominations in the world. Clearly, somebody's not getting it right. Because most of these are an organization starting because they don't like the previous organization. So they're constantly trying to reinvent themselves. When if people just could embrace that God loves you like you are. Like I tell you this all the time, that Jesus, you know, you look at the one-on-one conversations he had with people that typically would be lectured by godly people. Jesus just met them right where they are. Yeah, I'll come here, you know, he tells the centurion, I'll come here, heal your young boyfriend. And the centurion's like, no, I'm not worthy that you come under my roof. Speak a word only and my servant will be healed. Jesus says that's the greatest faith I found in all of Israel. I'm sure anybody that was Mount Sinai, now I want to call it Mount Cyanide, Mount Sinai, they'd be like, Jesus, somebody needs to tell him to live right, straighten up. Any of y'all ever come from one of those churches where somebody said, oh, they ain't saved? Oh, I saw them go in that club the other night. They ain't saved. Oh, she couldn't be coming to church dressed like that. She ain't saved. Well, that's your interpretation. That's somebody who maybe is not living the life that you visualize. But I'm telling you, I've met a lot of people who call themselves Christians, and I think if that's what a Christian is, then call me something else. Come up with another word for me, because I am not that, and I do not aspire to be that. That does not motivate me in any way. So if that's what we got to be, if we got to become that to please God, I'm out. Because I'm not only not ever going to be that, I don't want to be that. I don't like that. The next one is, this is Ephesians chapter 6, 4. This is also, chapter 6, verse 4. This is also in the Amplified Classic. It says, fathers, do not irritate and provoke your children to anger. Do not exasperate them to resentment, but rear them tenderly in the training and discipline and the counsel and admonition of the Lord. I'm going to show you this picture very quickly, and I don't want to talk a lot about it because this picture can be triggering for a lot of people. But it's a painting. If you got that, Michelle, I've seen this used a lot, and it's a lot of times you'll see it used with like a rainbow on the wings or whatever, and it's a picture says a lot of words. It's basically a father saying to a son, "You can't be like you are." All right, take it out because I don't like to look at it too long. Any of us that grew up watching the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, especially some of us in this room, definitely understood the subtext. When Rudolph's dad said, "No son of mine's going to have a red nose," and I'm not just talking from LGBT people. I'm saying any of you that ever thought you didn't live up to the expectation of a father figure or a father himself, you can go through your whole life thinking, I must be a failure because I'm not like that person wanted me to be. And what he's saying here is, don't irritate your children. Your children are who they are. What you have to do is play to their strengths, speak to who they really want to be, who they know that they are, and I'm talking about across the board. If you're like a parent, then that's great. If not, that's also great. Let me show you this. This is Ephesians 6:4 in also in the Mirror translation. It says 6:6, but maybe anyway, it's this. Oh, it's 6:4. Okay. Show me the next one then, the one that's in the mirror. Okay. I'm not sure if it's verse 4 or verse 6. This is very interesting. It says, fathers, your role is not to exasperate your children by giving them burdens and tasks too heavy to bear. Let me say that Mother's Day and Father's Day are very difficult days to teach on because we all have stuff. We were talking about some things even this morning. And people don't seem to get as emotionally messed up about fathers as they do about mothers. Mothers in our culture are Mother's Day is nearly like a religious holiday. But a daddy or a lack thereof or what it can affect you all the days of your life. And let me tell you something that you have to learn, even to piggyback on what I taught last week about empathy. I was reading something the other day. I'd been watching some episodes of the old Dick Van Dyke Show that came on in the early 60s. And it's considered kind of a template for more sophisticated sitcoms. It's sort of a watershed. It was a change in the way they wrote sitcoms. And y'all know what I'm talking about. Da, 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 da. And they showed a shot. You remember when Rob and Laura Petrie they were always in their twin beds? And it's always a big thing when people talk about sitcoms that the first on-air married couple to ever share a bed were the Brady's. But that's not actually true. It was actually Green Acres. I don't know if you remember. Green Acres came on a couple of years before the Brady Bunch. And remember, they would be in their ridiculously ornate bed in their horrible little house. Y'all have watched TV, haven't you? You're like, I remember one time years ago, Kim Clement invited me up to speak at this big church in Detroit. There's probably 3,000 people there. And in the middle of my teaching, I said something. I said, "Warning, warning, Will Robinson, danger." And I did like that, and everybody just looked at me like, "What the hell?" And I said, "Y'all know, Lost in Space." And everybody's like, "We don't know." I said, "Y'all never watched Lost in Space?" They had no. I'm not saying people in Detroit didn't watch TV, but I had to get a whole other frame of reference because I'm used to talking to people, huh? Oh no, I'm not saying y'all didn't. Y'all were you. I know you watched. I'm saying they didn't. It's like I was preaching in Panama one time, and I had a great interpreter, and he's interpreting Spanish for me. But I said something about this guy was really cool, and he didn't understand what I meant. And he stopped in the middle of the thing. He said, "What do you mean? Was he cold?" I said, "No." He was like, "I'm trying to act out cool." I'm like, he was like, "Cool." And everybody's looking at me like, "What are you talking?" I said, "Scratch that." And then he's like, "Scratch what?" Like we just kept spiraling downward. I said, let me start over. Anyway, this is very interesting because I would like to expand this just from beyond Father's Day. There are authority figures, systems, organizations, ideologies that have placed on people burdens too heavy for them to bear. Jesus actually rebuked the Pharisees for this. He said, "You put expectations on people, burdens on that you don't even live yourself." If you ever grew up with a lot of teaching about personal holiness, especially when it gets into works, that can get really very frustrating because one person's definition of what's holy may not be someone else's definition of it. I remember a few years, some of y'all remember the musician Amy Winehouse. There's a way that she would do her hair, which it was like kind of high on top, and then she had a ponytail coming down. And a guy that worked for Dottie Rambo, he put a side-by-side picture. He said, "This is exactly what Dottie Rambo's hair used to look like." And the reason why is because the Rambos traveled in the United Pentecostal Church, and in some parts of the country, women were supposed to wear their hair up, and in other parts of the country, women were supposed to wear their hair down, show how long it was. And because they were going to all these different churches, she had to come up with a hairdo that pleased everybody. And I remember, my parents going through things like that. That certain things, my mom wouldn't understand. Why can't I wear this? And my dad would explain it to her, and I'd think, here we go. But, in her mind, there's nothing wrong with this. And he would say, "I know you don't think there is, but the sister so-and-so probably does." You know what happens when you're never taught to please God. You're taught to not tick off some older religious person. I think last week I was talking about evangelists that used to call out people's personal sins, and Rhonda was here. She said we had an old mother. Some of you know those churches that had like a motherboard, like those older women that would sit. And I'm not saying they were all like this, but not only were they praising the Lord, they were judging everybody that was in there. And she said anytime there were certain mothers, there was one particularly, she would call people out, and she said when she stood up to speak, people would literally get up and run out of the church because Sister so-and-so would just. And it wasn't necessarily stuff she got by the Spirit. A lot of it was, through the grapevine. You heard? And so she would get up and start pointing people out. Who was sleeping with who and who was drinking what. And it was kind of like the Harper Valley PTA, where she comes in and busts everybody on it. And that's not what Jesus did. I'll show you this next verse. This is also Ephesians 6:6 in the Mirror translation. Oh, it's the content. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. You are rather to awaken their minds in an environment conducive to draw on every virtue that is where? In them, in the Lord. What a parent is supposed to do is find where the treasure is in that child and celebrate that. And let me tell you this. You say, well, it's too late. My mom and daddy didn't do that and they're already gone on. Well, then you have to parent yourself. You have to say, all right, they were walking in the light they had. And I forgot when I was telling you about the Dick Van Dyke. Thank you, me. So I'm reading this article about it, and they show this picture of Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore in their roles as Rob and Laura Petrie, but they're standing on a studio soundstage, and you can see the audience, and you see the cameraman, and you see the director, and they're standing there like in their pajamas, and it just gave me a completely different perception, because I grew up thinking, oh, that's their bedroom. I'm so glad I remember this. So some of you are thinking, why are you talking about Dick Van Dyke? This is why. About empathy. When you, and this is true for a parent or whatever, if there's someone who affected you a particular way, at some point you have to stop judging whatever they said to you through who you were at that time and bring the camera around to the other side. When I saw that picture of those two actors standing there in front of a studio audience, it just gave me such a, now when I watch the Dick Van Dyke Show on YouTube, I don't think of them in a bedroom. I'm like, oh, they're on a soundstage, and there's people watching them, and that's what empathy is. If you keep judging something that a parent said to you or an authority figure or a teacher, and your inner child keeps processing it, all you're going to do is you're going to keep reinforcing the same thing. You're going to keep hurting yourself. You're going to keep self-sabotaging. So you have to bring that camera around and show the other angle. Show it from that viewpoint. Empathy doesn't mean you like what somebody did, you condone what somebody did. It means that you are able to get inside their paradigm so that you don't just keep judging the same thing over and over again. Why would they say that? Why would they say that? There's certain things you've said over and over to yourself, a million times. Why did my father say that? Why did my mother say that? Why did that teacher say that? Why did that minister say that? And you keep judging it through your paradigm, and you're going to come up with the same outlook over and over again. You have to get inside their head. How were they seeing this? Will, I've quoted you on this 1,000 times. But one time years ago, Will's been with me for many years, I was asking for more of a feedback from people. I was like, are y'all with me today? Are y'all listening? And he told me afterwards, he said, I just want you to know, he said, I've never, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth. He said, I don't think you've ever said anything I disagree with. However, there are some things that you say, when you say them, I think, that's not what Big Mama said. So I have to have a minute there and process, what am I going to do with the memory of her and not disrespect my elders, my spiritual background, but also realize that you are my pastor and you're a voice in my life. He said, I just want you to know when people are being really quiet, it's not they're disagreeing with you. It's you just killed 13 sacred cows that they've known for years and named all those cows, and you just killed them. And we're not trying to defend the cows. We're just, our memory is trying to think, what would Big Mama think? Because she loved that cow. You didn't say all that. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to do better than that. Thanks for coming. Drive safely. I'll see you next week. No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. In fact, there's certain things I can think of over my life that my dad would have said to me. And then when I realize what he was dealing with from religion, that I think, wow, considering the context, you were amazingly evolved. It's kind of like, when you read Paul said in Christ there's neither male nor female, that's fine. When you understand where Paul came from and he kind of was misogynistic, I think, wow, Paul, that must have been really hard for you to say that. That must have really been, it means when Jesus said it, you're like, yeah, of course, Jesus, liberates women. When Paul said it, it's like, wow, that was a very evolved statement. No, you're exactly right. Exactly right about that. All right, let's finish this up. Y'all still with me? Colossians 3:21, this is in the Amplified Classic. It says, fathers, do not provoke or irritate or fret your children. Do not be hard on them or harass them, lest they become discouraged and sullen and morose and feel inferior and frustrated. Do not break their spirit. And let me tell you this. Sometimes just acknowledging that something went down or was said can fix it. And if it's not acknowledged, then, like what Will was just saying, you have to find it in yourself. You have to find ways to parent your own inner child. There's a meme that I love. It says, be the person you wish you knew when you were a young person. And I think, man, that's so true. That's why you can't really walk in empathy until you are empathetic to yourself. And then let me show you this. This is the same verse in the Mirror translation. It says, parents are responsible for the atmosphere at home. Avoid vibes. It's the only time I've seen in the Bible I've ever seen the word vibes. Avoid vibes that dampen the child's spirit. Now, that doesn't mean no discipline. If you say, my kid's artistic, so I'm just going to give them crayons and just let them go to town on the walls. No, it's incumbent upon you to say, we don't write on the walls. We write on this piece of paper. That you're supposed to teach your kids, stop at the red light and wear a seatbelt and go to school and eat your vegetables and all these things. So, of course, you're supposed to give them structure and boundaries. But within that, if there's something that is true to them, authentic to them, real to them, you have to parent from Mount Zion and not from Mount Sinai. Because Mount Sinai locks you into a set of commandments. This is the way we do it. And I fully support as long as you're living in my house, eating at my table, you're going to follow my rules. That, I think, is true across the board. If you are in someone's home, yes, you acknowledge whatever is their rule. But when it comes to life matters, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And the problem with reading the Scriptures from the vantage point of Mount Sinai is all you get is death. You get destruction. You get critiques. The famous saying, we don't read the Bible. We don't see the world as it is. We see it as we are. That's also true for the Bible. We don't read the Bible as it is. We read it as we are. That's why I quit arguing with people about the Scriptures, because if you want to find the judgmental, angry God, He's in the Scriptures. And it's interesting how some people will naturally gravitate to those verses of Scripture because that's in them. Let me tell you something. And again, why it's so important to say love yourself. The more comfortable you are in your own skin, the less dictatorial you become for everybody else. Like if you don't love yourself, you can't say live and let live. Because the implication is, if somebody sees the world differently from me, I must be wrong, and I can't allow myself to be wrong. So I've got to judge you, and let me find a couple of verses of scriptures to clobber you with, because I guarantee you, whatever point you want to get across, that's why I laugh when somebody says, the Bible is very clear about, etc. I think, you must not have read it, because it's not clear about pretty much anything. Like, it's just as soon as you come up with one ideology, because it's not a book, it's a collection, it's ta biblia, bibliotech, it's a library. As soon as you find this premise, somebody else comes along and says just the opposite. That's why when you read, Paul's epistles, you think, Paul, did you ever read the Gospels? No, because the Gospels were written after the epistles. You know why they were written? Because the original apostles never did receive Paul. They were like, you can't just be riding on the road to Damascus and say that a bright light spoke to you out of heaven. That isn't the way I became an apostle. I became an apostle because Jesus himself hand chose me. Road to Damascus. And then Paul's like, oh, now I'm going to really show you how out of the box I am. Y'all think I'm going to come to Jerusalem and be mentored by y'all? Oh, no. I'm going to Arabia for 3 years. I'm going to get all of this by revelation. Y'all can read the scriptures all you want to. I'm getting mine by revelation. So when the original apostles started dying off, they said, some of us needs to write down the biography of Jesus, because this so-and-so is coming along, and he's going to reinvent everything that we have held dear. And so when the Gospels were written, it was sort of like to correct Paul. Like, yeah, I don't think he's saved, much less an apostle. And so that's why when you read the things that people wrote in the scriptures, you have to rightly divide and understand, I understand why he said this. I'm not going to say God said this. This was Paul saying this as he was working out his own understanding of spirituality and transcendence. I tell you this all the time, but when Moses and Elijah appeared on the Mount of Transfiguration with Jesus, Moses was not holding 10 Commandments. He basically said, yeah, been there, done that, got the T-shirt. 10 Commandments did not make people behave. Because then he came up with 613 commandments. People still didn't behave. You've broken 17 of them just this morning. That's why legalism it's just death. In the International Standard Version, it says the written text kills, but the Spirit gives life. So when you say, did he ever read that? No, he didn't read it. If anything, the Gospels were aimed at him. Like, we knew who Jesus was. The only time we see a meeting of the minds is after those 3 years Paul was in Arabia. He goes back and he finally meets Peter, and they spend like 2 weeks together just sort of talking to each other, giving, well, this is what Jesus said to me, and Paul said, well, this is what the bright light said to me. And they sort of somehow didn't kill each other. As far as we know, Peter did not cut off Paul's ear. He wasn't above dismembering you if you disagree. But somehow they had some kind of meeting of the minds. But never really became bros. It was a very precarious relationship. And that's why when you read some of the things that Peter says, some of the things that Paul said, wow, they're really different. Peter says, ladies, if you're married to an unbeliever, you alone can win him over by your godly lifestyle. Paul says just the opposite. Paul says, if you're married to a heathen, let him go. You're not responsible for them. Just totally. I was thinking about it this week when I went to Arvin's house for his. Some of y'all remember our neighbor in Covington that I used to talk about. He passed away, and I went to his. They had a viewing of him at his home, and I was remembering because in Covington there's the First Baptist Church, and then there was Arvin's house, and then our house where we lived, and so a new pastor nice guy, nice young guy. I don't think he's there now. He invited me to lunch. Okay, that's nice. So we go to lunch, and he said, somehow in the conversation, he was not being argumentative. He just said something about the Bible always has to confirm itself, and anybody that says it's full of contradictions is wrong. And I said, well, actually, it is kind of full of contradictions. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, like Peter said women could win. He literally says without the word. That you would be such an epitome of a godly woman that you're going to be married to a man and say, I've got to be like you. And Paul said just the opposite. Paul said, if you're married to an unbeliever, let him go. He said, you don't have any guarantee you could save your spouse. And he said, the Bible doesn't say that. And I didn't want to argue with him because I was, when a Southern Baptist takes you to lunch, you don't want to tick them off. He said, I've never read that before. And I'm like, 1 Corinthians 7. I didn't want to exalt my knowledge, but I was like, well, okay, maybe I'm wrong. 1 Corinthians chapter. But that was the way he interpreted it. That's fine. To wrap it all up today, how do you live your life? If you're constantly bent out of shape at everything everybody else does, you might need to check out, why is that affecting me so much? Why are their actions affecting me so deeply? Let me tell you one of the greatest things in the world, and I'm not totally there yet, but I'm approaching. I'm circling the airport. Getting to the place where you stop taking stuff personally is the greatest liberty in your life, and it's not easy to do. When you realize, oh, maybe this is not about me, and maybe you have your journey, and if it is about me, let's fix it. But otherwise, the more you are comfortable on Mount Zion, the more you let other people be who they are. And so I wanted to connect that with Father's Day. And, thank God for whoever your father was. Thank God for that. Remember today what was positive. One of the most bonding things I've ever experienced in my life is I stood at the bed with Ken as we watched his father cross over and transition. And I don't know, 5 years later, he stood at my dad's bed, and nobody, and same thing. Nobody could ever take that away from us. We both watched our fathers go to the other side. And Pastor Jimmy and I still need to talk about a couple of things that I thought we were going to talk about before we left. So I'm like, okay, I'll catch up with you somewhere in eternity, and we'll talk about it then. But in the meantime, I want to remember what you did that was positive and honor your contribution to my life and be thankful for you. And you should do the same thing. You say, well, I never knew who my father was. Well, if you really open your eyes, you'll probably find that you had surrogates. There are people that Spirit brought into your life to speak to you. Jesus says anybody that's given up these things will receive in this life all these relationships. And so thank God for father figures. Several people messaged me today and said, I want to say Happy Father's Day to you because you're my spiritual father. And you, I hear it a lot from people that say you're an authority figure in my life that I respect. That's a very humbling and beautiful thing. So let's all stand. Did you get anything out of this today? Somehow we got through it that we're not in a fetal position. Huh? And the projector worked. If you're a father, a stepfather, a grandfather, if you've been involved in the parenting process, would you come stand here? I want to speak a word over you, all of you dads, fathers. Ernie, you're not going to have to go to therapy. We're giving you all the workout. Ernie had knee replacement recently. We're making him run up these stadium steps. Give these great men a hand. Stretch your hand towards in the direction of these dads. Spirit of God, we thank you for these great men, good men of integrity, men who are not perfect, didn't claim to be perfect, but did the best they could with the knowledge that they had. I thank you that we all continue to evolve and learn ways that we can be better parents, learn to communicate better, learn to live on Mount Zion as opposed to Mount Sinai. I lift up these men and speak a blessing to them, strength to them, life to them, energy to them, wisdom, knowledge, blessing. I thank you that they are surrounded by angelic hosts and filled with the Spirit, that Jesus has made of them wisdom, righteousness, sanctification, and redemption. We thank you for these men who have been a part of making our world a better place. Thank you that they have been faithful and that their best days are ahead of them, that with long life you satisfy them and show them your salvation. We thank you for it. In Jesus' name. Everybody said, amen, amen, amen. Let's give the dads a hand. What's up, dads? Who's winning it? Wellington? Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Just remain standing, please. Good. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Where did BJ go? Oh, okay. Mount Sinai has spoken. But you got a couple of pictures of the. Okay, thanks. All right. If you remain standing, please, I'm going to play the outro for you, and then I'll speak a blessing over everybody. If you would, please.
Contributing to Metron is quick and easy. You can give anytime using any smartphone. Text the amount you would like to donate to 404-620-5044. You will then receive a notification that you successfully completed your donation. You may also visit bishonthennow.com and click the support tab to give there as well. When you contribute to Metron, you're also donating to the charity or organization of the month. Thank you for your investment into Metron.
If you're making a check, just make it to JESM, and Colonel will receive it. And if you have cash, just pay it forward and bless somebody. I wish you could do one more. I wish you could groove us out with one more song. Or is that asking too much? Should I wait till next week? All right. Bring a little more next week because everybody really, really loved it. Yeah. Oh, okay. Fred brought you some groceries if you want to. If you got a list of other stuff you'd like next week, just submit that in and see what happens. I don't know. But anyway, sometimes he has seafood surplus, and it's always good stuff. So thank you. Avery? Thank you. Yes, from now on, I prefer that you call me Big Daddy. Is that too? Is that? Zaddy. I know what that is. I know what a zaddy is. I gotta be a little cleaner to be a zaddy, but I know how to do it. Thank you, Avery. I appreciate that. And as my spiritual children, it's you become more valuable to me every day that I know you. Thank you so much. All right. You're blessed when you come in. You're blessed when you go out. Blessed in the city. Blessed in the country. Blessed in the basket. Blessed in the store. Blessed is the fruit of your body. The Lord makes you the head and not the tail. You're above only and not beneath. You have an excellent week. You'll rise to the occasion. You'll run and not be weary. You'll walk and not faint. I speak healing and health to your physical body and peace to your mind. And say that you wake up tomorrow saying, this is the day that the Lord has enabled me to make. I will rejoice and be glad in it. God bless you. Go in peace. See you next week. John will be back with us.